Okay, I'm going to be looking at composite bamboo materials today. Hardwood timber is actually quite expensive for the hobby woodworker in the UK, and I'm always exploring alternative sources for interesting woods. So I've done some recycling of pallets and reclaimed timber from the Southampton Wood Recycling Project, which you can find links to in the description below and in my other videos. But anyway, I was thinking bamboo actually might be quite an interesting material. So I can buy timber type materials made from bamboo, or I can buy things like chopping boards and repurpose them. But I was looking for a fairly cost-effective source of bamboo timber. So it struck me that maybe flooring was the answer. So I can buy flooring materials which are not laminates, they are solid bamboo timber or timber analogues. So I sent off for some free samples, so let's just have a look at what I got back. So this is from the Bamboo Flooring Company. There'll be links to all of these companies in the product description. And they sent me 3 samples of 3 different types of composite bamboo material. We've got one where the bamboo's been cut into rectangular section strips and then glued together vertically stacked. So we're seeing the edge of the bamboo strips here. There's a similar one where the strips have been glued horizontally, and so we're seeing the faces of the strips here. Most of the difference there, I think, is just the way it looks. You can see the nodes here much more conspicuously. I have a feeling this one might be slightly harder wearing. And then there's this stuff, which is strand woven bamboo. Now this is an interesting material because it is a bit like OSB and other resin bonded composite materials. This is made from bamboo stalks that have been crushed and split and then laid lengthwise in a big mould, soaked in a bit of resin and then pressed under great pressure. That produces like a solid beam of bamboo timber, which is then sawn into pieces and finished. And the effect is actually quite remarkable. It really does look like timber. The end grain's quite odd, but it does look like, you know, walnut or something like that. Except it also has a bit of a sheen to it, a bit of depth, probably from the transparency of the resin and the bamboo fibres. So anyway, so that's the 3 samples I got from the Bamboo Flooring Company. I also sent off for samples from Simply Bamboo, and they've sent me 3, these are 3 strand woven pieces, thinner than this strand woven. That's interesting, quite considerably thinner, but about only 2/3 of the thickness. And these have been stained to look like walnut and oak and so on. So that's 3 composite strand woven. And then finally, this is from Posh Flooring. This is another horizontal stacked piece. It looks actually, it's thicker than this. Pieces are actually larger. So that's interesting. There's a wear layer on the top there, which looks like the wear layer actually might be something quite different to the underside. Not so. Yeah, I have a feeling with these ones here, the pieces that have been put on the top are much higher quality than the pieces underneath. There are some voids there in the ends, and I think we've probably got, no, not so much on this one, but we have got a definite difference between the top wear layer and the rest. In fact, there's a slight wavy effect here. Oh, I see, this has been sculpted actually to make it sort of wavy. That would give you a not completely flat level floor, but it's a kind of effect, isn't it? Anyway, so I'm going to take these downstairs now to my workbench, and we're going to try a bunch of different things with them. Actually, we're going to try drilling them, we're going to try cutting them with a saw, we're going to try planing them and see what kind of results we get. I have a feeling that we're going to find that some of these will fray and will get raised grain when we try and plane them. But let's go and see what sort of things we can achieve with these different samples. One thing to say before we start is that actually I can see these have frayed a little bit where it's been cut. It's obviously been cut to send me samples, probably on a circular saw by the look of that there. But there is a little bit of fraying at the edge there, and the splinters on these things are like needles. So we will have to be a little bit careful and make sure that we don't get injured or splinters, those kind of invisible cactus thorn type splinters where hurts you forever, but you never find the thing. Okay, so first off, we're going to try hand tools. We'll see what happens when I cut each of the types of bamboo with either a pull saw or my hard point general purpose saw. So let's start with the vertical stacked bamboo. I'll clamp it at this end. Okay, pull saw first. Well, one thing to observe straight off is it's actually quite difficult to clamp because this is glossy finished. It doesn't, it slips about a fair old bit on the board here, which is interesting to know. Okay, so the pull saw, yeah, the pull saw achieves a very fine, nice cut into the bamboo. Yep, and the hard point general purpose saw also cuts rather well. A little bit of splitting out on the underside there with the general purpose saw, but that's not unusual to find that with close grained timber either. It feels like timber when I'm cutting it. We'll try the same with the horizontal stacked now. Okay, that feels exactly like timber. Pull saw is a little bit more difficult here. It's catching on the grain, I think, a little bit, catching on the fibres. But part of the problem is my clamping. Again, I'm having trouble clamping it because of the smooth and glossy nature of the finish. But we're fine cutting that with either saw. That's fine. Finally, in this section of the test, we're going to cut the strand woven. Now this is the most interesting one of the lot for me because this is a true composite material. This is a bit like chipboard or OSB but made of bamboo. Okay, considerably more binding on the blade. I can see a little bit of whiteness there actually where I think it's just spooled the resin. Doesn't feel quite like cutting timber. It feels like cutting plastic, which is interesting. Let's try it with a big saw. Much slower to cut here, and I can see some kind of spalling and damage to the surface resin there. That may just be to the wear layer resin actually, but the splitting out again is a slight problem on the underside. So I think maybe a finer saw in general is the answer. But all in all three of these samples sawed adequately well, albeit my cuts are not very straight. Clamping is a problem. Okay, the next test is going to be drilling, and for this I'm going to be using a 19mm spade bit, 6mm wood drill, and a 6mm general purpose twist drill. So let's begin with the vertical stacked bamboo. Clamping's a bit better. I think part of the problem there was my clamp. Anyway, let's start with the wood drill. No problems there, quite a nice clean hole. Okay, we'll try the general purpose drill now. This one just doesn't have a point on it to engage with the wood, so this is one where you'd probably use this in a drill press normally. Again, nice clean hole, that's no problem at all with those results. And now the 19mm spade bit. Okay, well, no problems at all there with the vertical stacked bamboo. Tiny little bit of breakout. I was clamped tight against the wood. Really, that's quite a good result. Next we'll try the horizontal stacked. So in reverse order, the spade bit. That seems to go okay. The general purpose drill now. No problem. And the wood drill with a spur tip. Again, a good result. Slightly more breakout, I would say, on the underside here, probably because of the way the fibres are aligned. But some of that's just breakout on that paper label, actually. There's a relatively clean hole there. And I think with a little bit more care than I've exercised here, that'll be fine. Now, again, this is the interesting one. This is the strand woven. And we'll we'll go that way, I think. So, starting with the wood drill. Definitely tougher going there than on the other ones, and a little bit of kind of resin spalling, I think, on the top of the hole there. And the spade bit. Okay, we didn't go all the way through. I better finish that off, really. That's interesting. I thought I was all the way through there, but apparently not. Apologies for the background noise. There's obviously some sort of emergency going on. Right, again, quite a clean hole. Now, I encountered conspicuously more resistance when drilling this material than with the other two, and I think that's because this strand woven stuff is very compressed, and of course it's got a resin content to it as well, so it's not a pure timber material. Next we're going to see what happens when we use a little scroll saw to cut a curved cut off of one corner. Okay, we're going to need to move the camera for this one. So yeah, let's start with the resin bonded. Okay, that's cut nice and cleanly. In fact, it's cut very smoothly. Surprisingly good. Okay, we're going to do the same with this is the horizontal strand. Okay, that's cut rather nicely. And we'll do the same. This is the vertical strips. We'll do the same here. Clamping it so that the scroll saw doesn't get stuck on the clamp is quite a challenge here, because these are smallish samples. Okay, all three of those functioned quite adequately. And in the scroll saw, this is where I suspect we may come unstuck. I'm going to try cutting with my trusty battered old electric planer and see if we can actually plane this material. We'll start with the horizontal strips. Because obviously if I want to use this material as timber, I will have to probably plane off the glossy surface of the floorboards, and I will certainly have to plane off things like tongues and grooves. So here we go. Okay, that's planed very nicely. That's ever such a lovely smooth surface there. This is on the horizontal strips. You have to be very careful. That edge is actually razor sharp. Okay, so this is now the vertical strips, and we'll try planing off that tongue. These pieces are rather short for this, but we'll see how we get on. Okay, that's planed up very nicely, ever so wobbly because it's such a short piece I can't really get a good run on it. Again, the edges are razor sharp, so that's something to watch out for. Planing it exposes some really interesting grains when you go through the nodes there. Now the really interesting bit, which is the strand woven material. So I'm going to try and plane off that tongue here. Now this again is where I think we may run into difficulties. Well, to my slight surprise, that's actually planed up okay. Again, completely wonky plane cut because it's such a short piece I can't get a good run on it. But that's planed up really smooth, and actually the exposed edges are look and probably behave a lot like timber. So there we go. Right. Okay, we're going to try something a bit dodgy here, which is I've clamped it up as best I can. I'm actually just going to run the planer across the flat surface here. I've got a feeling it may kick out actually, because clamping this stuff down is difficult. But let's see how we go. I'm going to put my hand here. Don't do this at home. Okay, that was quite a deep cut, but that's a simulation of what we might expect to see if we ran planks of this stuff through a thicknesser. Kind of simulation. As you can see, I had a bit of trouble planing that, and I think probably taking off is about 1.5 mil there. Probably a little bit too deep a cut, but anyway, it's exposed the unfinished material underneath, which again looks and behaves like timber. And interestingly, it hasn't got, even though the fibres in here are wavy, it hasn't got raised grain. Let's just recap on these three different materials, all made of bamboo. So this is the horizontal composite. Sawing was okay. Oh, interestingly, we got a split there. That's short grain, obviously, but I guess that's a risk. Yeah, the joins are not bricked, so actually there's probably a risk that it could snap across those glue lines. But it's sawed more or less like natural timber. Drilling was just fine. A little bit of breakout on the underside. Drilled with 3 different drill bits, just fine. Cut very nicely with a scroll saw. The vertical section, bamboo. I think this was probably the most like timber to work with. It cut fine. The short grain doesn't seem to be quite such a problem on this one. I think I probably could snap that off. Yeah, it snapped a little bit off. Yeah, I probably could snap that off, but I won't. Drilling was good and nice clean holes, and it cut very nicely with the scroll saw. And the strand woven, tough to cut and tough to drill. It was hard going, which probably equates to more wear on the tools and sharp edges than it would with the other materials, but it cut and drilled just fine. There's a little bit of burning on the drill actually because it was hard going. Planing on all 3 of these materials was quite pleasant and interesting. Planing actually on these 2, because we're planing a natural strip of bamboo, left razor sharp edges on the edges there. Planing on the strand woven was just really like working with quite a dense wood. Again, I think probably quite hard on the tools because of the resin that's in there and the density of this material. But this is the one where I planed the face, the polished face off as well, just to see what that would be like, and it just worked okay. So in summary, I think probably all of these materials have potential to be used in place of hardwood timber. And when I say these materials, I'm not just talking about bamboo in general, I'm talking about using flooring materials to make small projects. There's an interesting choice of thicknesses. These here probably would only need one little run through the planer and could be used for making boxes, and in fact you might even be able to preserve the glossy finish that's already on there, or on most surfaces, with a little bit of care. These are thicker. Obviously other purposes might suit those. So all in all, I think these things have potential to be used as timber for the home and hobby woodworker. So I'll be ordering up, I think, some of this strand woven bamboo flooring, and I'll try to make something with it. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.